he's going to look at this and say, okay, this is one of Europe's leading powers. It's the one that's been the greatest thorn in my side when it comes to challenging me on Ukraine and supporting the Ukrainians. But it doesn't appear yet to have woken up to the fact that this is not just Ukraine's fight.
Britain will be transformed into a battle-ready, bomber-clad nation, or so pledged the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, as he accepted all the recommendations of the Strategic Defence Review yesterday. There'll be an increase in the number of regular personnel when funding allows. The government will invest £15 billion in nuclear warheads and buy up to 12 attack submarines. The army will be 10 times more lethal by 2035, according to ministers. But the issue of spending on defence is dominating the discussion. Earlier on the programme, Defence Secretary John Healey couldn't rule out tax rises to pay for the pledges.
We'll set out how we'll pay for future increases in the future. The key to this, of course, is a growing economy, and defence can be part of growing the economy for the future. An investment in the British jobs, the British skills, new technology and new British businesses, and that's what my announcement today, doubling the investment to £4 billion in this Parliament in new drone technology, that's the sort of thing that will drive economic growth and bring good new jobs to every part of Britain.
Well, listening to that is General Patrick Sanders, the former chief of the Defence Staff between 2022 and last year, and co-host of the Times new podcast, The General and the Journalist. Good morning.
Morning, Kate.
You will have heard from the Prime Minister and the Defence Secretary yesterday and no doubt looked through this Strategic Defence Review. What is your response to it? Is the government in the right place when it's identifying the threats that this country now faces?
Well, I think the authors are. I mean, this is probably the most honest defence review that I think I can remember reading in my professional career, and it's incredibly serious about the threats that it identifies as facing the UK. And the authors are serious people. I mean, they are independent, and so we should listen to them. But I think, as you said in the lead into this, it's not yet clear that the government is ready to respond in a serious way to this very serious report. And the issue isn't so much one of money. That's where most of the focus has been. For me, this is an issue of time. But we should reflect for a second on just what this report gets right, because there's an awful lot of it. This is the first one that we've had in the last 6 defence reviews where there are no cuts, and we should celebrate that. It talks about deterring and preventing full-scale protracted war. That's the first time since the end of the Cold War we've had such a cold, hard assessment of what needs to be done. It prioritizes NATO, and it talks, I think, really importantly about defense being an engine of growth and supercharging cohesion inside the country and lifting deprived communities like Barrow out of deprivation. And it talks a very good sense about innovation and developing a national arsenal. So it does a lot of really good things, but it doesn't address the issue of time. And time is really what worries me.
And what is it that's concerning you about the timelines that are set out in this review?
Well, for a start, the only date set in there, as far as funding is concerned, is 2027. That's 2.5% by 2027. But we can see from all of the threat assessments that are coming out of our own defence intelligence community, from across Europe and across NATO, that the threats are coming at us much, much faster than that. So I think only yesterday or the day before, the head of the chief of defence in Germany identified 2029 as a possible date for Russia presenting a very real threat to NATO states, and in particular the Baltic. And if we're not prepared to be ready by then, and we're talking about things like 2034 or 2035, that is way too slow.
I mean, I suppose until very recently, you were the chief of the defence staff. I mean, you're talking there about this being too slow of a reaction. The government's not yet realised or is willing to accept publicly how real the threat is. What used to keep you up at night? Where are the gaps? Where are the risks? What was the thing that you used to sit thinking about and worrying that we were not prepared for or not doing enough of?
Well, for a start, this is going to sound techie, but I wasn't the chief of the defense staff. I was the chief of the general staff, so I was head of the army. These are titles that will confuse people. Um, but I guess the thing that most kept me awake, funnily enough, wasn't you know what helped me sleep was the quality of our people and the commitment that they have. I mean, there's no doubt that we start with very firm foundations as far as quality is concerned. But our stockpiles, our ability to sustain a protracted operation beyond a few days, in some cases, and a few weeks at most, means that if you can't sustain an operation, you're not telling your enemy, your opponent, in this case Russia, that you can outlast him. And we've allowed our stockpiles to run down. We've given an awful lot of them away, and rightly so, to Ukraine. But this is a war that's been running for 3 years, and I come back to this issue of time. We didn't take steps that we needed to 3 years ago. The government's been in power for a year. This review's been published late. It's then going to take even more time to address the very serious threats it identifies. So time is the one thing you cannot get back is time. You can always find money, but you can never get time back.
So if you are Vladimir Putin reading this strategic defence review, as of course he can do, what would you be thinking? What do you think he will be thinking?
I would be thinking that the government isn't serious yet.
And I mean, that's a huge statement to make, isn't it? I mean, he'd be rubbing his hands together. He's going to look at this and say, okay, this is one of Europe's leading powers. It's the one that's been the greatest thorn in my side when it comes to challenging me on Ukraine and supporting the Ukrainians. But it doesn't appear yet to have woken up to the fact that this is not just Ukraine's fight. This is Europe's fight, and Europe are threatened by Russia. So we've got to be able to deter Russia, because that is so much cheaper than fighting a war with them. I'm not saying that that's necessarily going to happen in the next year or 2 or 3 years, but the only way you can prevent it from happening is if you've got the capabilities at readiness and sustainable and ready for a protracted war. And that then gives Putin pause for thought. You say not necessarily in the next 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, but you think there is a very real prospect of a war between this country and Russia, not via Ukraine, but between us and President Putin?
I think we've entered an era where might is right, where President Putin is challenging the international norms that have respected territorial integrity and sovereignty and independence. And he's doing it in Ukraine. But if you want to know what Putin thinks and is going to do, just listen to what he says and what he writes. And he talks about restoring Russia's historic lands. He talks about the root causes. So, no, I'm not saying that war is inevitable, but I am saying, as this report says incredibly clearly and well, that if you don't act to deter it and to prevent it, you will make it more likely.
Yeah. I want to ask you finally, there is an element of the report, in fact, a significant amount of the report talks about personnel, about attitudes, about a career in the military. But it also says that the military is too focused on, quote, safety at all costs. And it highlights the fact that forces need to embrace risk more and be allowed to practice firing long-range weapons. Do you think that's right? Is the military too focused on safety at the moment?
So those words will be absolute music to the ears of commanders and soldiers, sailors and aviators across defence, because there is no doubt that that a focus on safety is overinterpreted. And I'm not talking about the safety of individual soldiers, sailors and aviators when they're conducting training. It's right that we take people to the limit and really stretch them, but we always make sure that they're safe. But quite often safety gets in the way of developing capability rapidly. So it's particularly true of our ability to develop drones, because we have to abide by a set of regulations that limit us from being able to fly and test those drones in all but the most unique sets of circumstances. So that is really welcome.
Sir Patrick, many thanks for your time on the programme this morning. That is General Sir Patrick Sanders. And of course, you can listen to that podcast, the New Times podcast, The General and the Journalist, with Patrick and Tom Newton-Dunn, wherever you get your podcasts and on the Times app.
It's a question we've been debating over the last couple of days. Do we really believe that there is a threat from Russia, that we could be engaged in a hot war, not via Ukraine, but actually there could be something coming down the line? And if we do believe that, we would act differently, wouldn't we? We would act differently when it comes to money, when it comes to our approach to matters defence. Patrick says if you can afford £4 on a latte, we should be able to accept a 1 or 2 pence income tax increase to help pay for the defence of the realm. And that's probably true if you believe the defence of the realm is going to be seriously threatened in the next 5 years. And that's the question I suppose everyone will be wrestling, is how much do you believe that that is a risk, and how much are you willing to change something in your life to do something about it? It's really been a bit of a theme of the week so far. We'll see where we get to as we go along.